go a little wider. Brings ball back for Marshall. The footwork. Benji Marshall. Now the speed. The footwork again. Away from Peachy. Passes without looking. Away for Richards. Back to Fitzhenry. That is as good as you will see.
Welcome back, ladies and gents, to another episode of the SuperCoach Tragics podcast. I'm your host, Dan, coach of Badonkadonk. Green arrows for me this week, which is not very hard considering where I started the year. So the only way really is up, which is great. With me tonight, I have two coaches who I believe also saw green arrows this week. First up, we have Glen. How was your week, mate?
Yeah, it was a good week. Could have been a better week, mate. I left a few points on the pine, but still moved up 38k, which is a fairly big jump. I've never been 38k, so to jump 38k is kind of sad. To 16k. I think I scored 1,186 or something around that number anyway.
Yeah, I think I jumped up. I scored like a 1,089, I think I got. So I managed to jump up from 87,000 to 56,000. So it's a big jump for me, but definitely a long way to go. Next up, we have Chris. Chris, mate, how are you going?
Yeah, mate. The captains of Crunch had a pretty good week, so not as good as we could have had. I ended up with 1181, but had some seriously underperforming people in the team. Surprise, surprise. I had Katoa for the 20, and I think I had about 4 guys that were under 20 in the team, just either by bad performances or by injury. So pretty happy I got 1181 at the end of the day, though.
Yeah, I'd be bloody stoked with that. If I could only get past 1,100, I'll be bloody stoked. In saying that, I was actually really happy. I ended up making 2 trades last week. I ended up going just before the news when the team list came out. I ended up dropping Angus and bringing in Payne Haas, which kind of bit me a little bit because having Payne Haas on my team, I thought it was an obvious captain, so I captained him. Instead of who I was going to captain was Munster, and I backed out last minute. So that kind of bit me a little bit, but I'm still happy moving forward. So I've still got Munster in my team, who I also traded in for Cody Walker. So quite happy with my trades. I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm boosting up this week.
One of the things that I'm going to say is I'm not looping forever, ever again. Last year I looped 3 times at 150, and all times I got burnt. I looped in the AFL, got burnt. And this week, what I was doing, I was bringing in Tyrone May or Firma. It was one of those two. But then when I seen the VC with Hines, I thought I'll just play 3 centre wingers and won't bother. And then May comes out and gets that huge score. And I think to myself, if I had just kept a C somewhere else and taken that 100, it's one of those weeks that could have been.
Yeah.
But,
that's it. Like, even though I'm happy with a few things, I've been happy with everything I've done this year, but I'm just not getting the results. So I just need to keep going with my plan, and hopefully I'll move forward. So moving on, before we get to the news, make sure everyone jump on to supercoach360.com. Great content up there, every week updated on a regular basis. I know Glen, Tim, Ross, and I think Brad Smith as well. Also, the other 360 boys are throwing some pretty good content up there. So please jump on, have a look if you haven't already. I think Glen had his work cut out in for this week with the news, a lot of news, mate. So how'd you go there?
Yeah, there's a fair bit of news, mate. So I'll try and get through it as quick as I can. So obviously we know Robbo's got COVID, so he won't be travelling with the Roosters this week. Nathan Cleary is back. So that's big for the Panthers and for SuperCoach. We all know his pedigree. And Stefano out 6 to 8 weeks. Musgrove moves into the front row, and Roberts also returns for the Tigers and Tuolagi with coming back from that HIA. Hetherington out for the season with his shoulder, so Waddell comes into the second row, which is an interesting SuperCoach prospect. Ray Stone, it was sad what happened there. He made the try to win the game for the Eels, and then he's out for the season too, and probably played his last game for the Eels. And Cardi comes into the bench. Jordan Ricky's been named, but is expected to miss the game versus the Warriors. So we'll see how that pans out. Flegg returns this week, coming back from his suspension. Pia Kura has had a grade 2 hammy, so a bit of bad luck there for the kid. And of course, Ryan James starts and Rabadi moves back to the bench. Kate Wall also has been named in reserves. He's struggling with a calf injury. Titans lose Sammy and Jaden Campbell this week, and they bring in their new signing of Isako to fullback, so that should be interesting. And I think Corey Thompson comes into the side as well onto the wing. Teague Wilton returns and Mulatalo for the Sharks. Xavier Coates returns for the Storm. Harry's a big one. Harry's been named to start, and Brandon Smith's been relegated to the bench. Watch late changes. That's just my shifty belief. Barnett, 6 weeks for that brain snap, and Brady Jones comes into the second row, so he's another interesting prospect for coaches to keep an eye on. James Newell-Brown's on the extended bench for the Cowboys. Maddo's also on the bench, back for Parramatta. And 2 more things are, so Gus has been instilling the dogs of war mentality back into the Bulldogs, and we saw that against Manly, where they really defended well, I thought. And Storm again hold a meeting on Grant and Hughes, and so there. And the other big one is, of course, Billy Slater has been named as coach for Queensland, and he's brought with him quite a bit of an arsenal with Jonathan Thurston, Smith, and was it Hannay?
Yeah.
It was Hannay. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out, and that's around the grounds.
Yeah, I heard that I'm not sure how accurate these rumours were, but apparently there's looking at potentially, depending on how he goes at Origin, Billy Slater being Bellamy's replacement when he does finally go. So I think they may want to hold off on that and watch the Origin first to see how he actually coaches. But definitely good to have that pedigree that to remain at the Storm.
I think at the Storm, I mean, club coaching is a lot more difficult, I think. But, I mean, for mine, it's an interesting pick if he does get the Storm position. But the upside for him there is that Craig Bellamy is going to stay on as a consultant so that he'll really have that board to bounce off. So I don't think it'll be so bad for him if he does coach. I still think that Queensland would suit better with a Wayne Bennett and those 3 in as they're playing that pump you up role and those working with positionals. But, I mean, those 3 have been there, done that, and they know what it takes to win for Queensland. So, you know, no one's going to knock to... they've been labelled the Beatles by Paul Kent. They're bringing in the Beatles. So I think that was a pretty funny statement.
All right, that's the news for the week. Let's start moving on to our positions, guys. So I'm going to start with hooker. I'm going to start with a few names here that I'm actually personally struggling with this week with my trades. So first up on the list is Harry Grant, 644,000. He's only played the 1 game at 92. His break even 39, which doesn't really count because it's only the 1 game. Owned by 14% of coaches. My issue there with getting him in is just there's a few question marks about what we believe is going to actually happen with that rotation there. And I came to hear your thoughts, Chris, on what you think is going to happen there with the rotation there with Grant, Smith, and even King.
Yeah, I think that King's role will be pretty similar. I think he rotates through the prop position, probably ends up still getting around 60 minutes. And I think Harry Grant will end up playing somewhere between 60 and 80 minutes every game. I can't see them not utilising him because their forward rotation is quite weak compared to what it was last year. So, yeah, that's what I think is going to happen anyway. And I think guys like Bromwich and Nas, they're just going to play little short stints. They probably be lucky to get 40 minutes each, and they'll just split the other minutes between the rest of them, I guess.
You know, I think Nas especially is probably more beneficial to have less minutes because when he's got a full tank, he's explosive. But I think his impact with that full tank is really, really hard to stop, and it's more beneficial to the team, I believe. Glenn, your thoughts?
Well, I have a few thoughts on it, actually, mate. So one idea that I think could happen is possibly that Nas moves back to the bench, King goes to prop, and then Smith comes on at 13. That's one scenario I can see possibly happening. Another scenario is a quick change and it's just Grant to the bench and Smith starts, which worked for them very well. But as you rightly pointed out, I think Nas is an impact player and he's best used coming from the bench. Grant's the future for that club, but I just think that his body doesn't hold up for 80 minutes if they play in that way every game. And I mean, it'd be interesting to see how the rotation works. So, I mean, we're all guessing at the moment. I feel certain had Welch been in that side and Grant not hurt his hand, that I think that Grant would have been starting off the bench. Same with Nas, and that's my belief. It doesn't mean I'm right. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. the reason why I'm asking, this is my dilemma for the week, is because I'm not sure who's more important to trade in this week. And I've had a discussion with you guys before the pod off air about whether Nico Hines is more important than Grant. And I think we've lent towards Nico Hines because the price rise is going to happen sooner. So the reason why I'm saying in this position here is because my next my trading that I'm looking at is actually bringing, because I've got Cody Nicarima, I'm going to trade in Starling this week, and he's the other guy I want to talk about. So he's 377k, averaging 51.7 with that dirty 39 in the middle there, but looked a lot better last week. He's owned by 3% of coaches, which surprised me a little bit there. I guess having the likes of Grant and Cook and Mahoney out there, that there's a lot of people will go on that way instead of actually go on the pod move. But I think now Starling for me is going to be my link to Grant, and hopefully about probably, I'd say 5 weeks around there. It's just whether I can handle not having Grant for 5 weeks.
And going Starling allows you to have Hines, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess it gets rid of Nicarima out of my team too.
Yeah, I think on the balance of two, Hines and Starling together, I think that's a combination. Whereas if you had Grant, who would have been your half?
Well, Sam Walker. So I would have had, instead of using 3 trades this week, which I'm going to, I would have only used 2, and I would have had Sam Walker kept in my team. But and I kind of still want Sam Walker in my team, but I feel like I can't get. If I'm going to choose between Teddy and Sam Walker to offload to get Hines, I'm going to choose Sam Walker to offload. And I think I feel like I'm going to pick the wrong one, but I guess I'm going to go with pedigree, and Teddy's the pedigree. So. And is there any other hookers or anything that you are looking at there, Chris?
Not really. I sort of had a bit of a play with Starling last year when Hodgson was a bit out of favour, and I saw what he could do in the minutes that he's going to be given, and I didn't like it. I think the base just isn't there, and he doesn't attack enough with his running game. I don't know. I'm a bit scared of that, so I'm going to stay away. I'm a bit fortunate though. I think I've got one of the better hookers in Watson in my side at the moment, and I think he does a better job of doing a Starling than Starling does. So I'm pretty happy there, and it gives me flexibility. So if I wanted to get rid of one of my second rowers, I can swap them to a Grant at some stage. I don't think I'm going to get Grant this week. Just, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me because I'm focusing more on cash generation, and I don't have guys like King, or not the King from Melbourne. I don't have him, and he's still got a minus 32 BE, so I'm going to get him. And I'm actually doing a quite controversial trade, but I'll fill you guys in once we get down into the halves discussion, and we'll go from there.
There's one other hooker I think we should mention is my hooker, which is Jamie and Cook. And I was a bit reluctant to jump on Hook. I actually started with Brandon Smith, and I made the trade to Cookie, and it was more based on points per dollar, at his price point. But what I really liked was what I heard the coach saying was that basically that Cook had been stifled and that it's time to let Cookie be Cookie. And as you saw, he had 9 runs in the first half in that last game that he played, and set up a really nice try there to Kolo Matangi. I will say I have 90k in the bank, and I can easily go from Cook to Grant. And, the temptation's there, especially with the Grant versus the Dogs. I'm a nervous non-owner, but I mean, Cook's got a pretty run coming from the next one. And but I think Cook, Starling and Grant are pretty much the 3 in the conversation. And I don't mind the pod player Watson either. I think that, the Roosters have got points in him, also got a nice draw. He looked very close, Watson, in the last game he played. There was a couple of opportunities there where he actually could have crossed the line. So, yeah, I think all 4. And there's one other one we haven't mentioned is Brayley for the Sharks. I think he's been playing exceptionally well this season. And there's one other one too, Jeremy Marshall-King. I mean, he surprised me. I probably wouldn't go there, but he does have a negative break even from memory. I think I wrote him down here. Yeah, just 4. He's got a break even of 4. I mean, so you'll possibly make your money if you can't quite get up there to one of them other guns and you're looking for someone that's a pod.
Yeah, I was going to make some honourable mentions there, and I think you've covered it there. So I'm going to bypass Appy Coruscant because I think we're gonna see it up and down with him. But yeah, JMK and Blake Brayley were the two I was going to actually make honourable mentions of. So we'll move on to the front row forwards, and Payne Haas, I believe, is the ultimate guy you need to get. Is that right, guys?
Oh, him and IPAP. I think IPAP's just sitting there. I mean, a bloke playing 80 minutes on a Parramatta edge that had, what was it? It's pretty much all raw base at plus power in his last game. He did have a line break for, what did he get, 94, I think it was. And 84 of that was in base plus power, offloads, tackle bust, pure runs and tackles. And I mean, so he has to be in the conversation as running not far behind, Haas is obviously ahead in points and he's the premium, but geez, IPAP's not far behind.
Yeah, I've got some numbers here. So with Haas, he's averaging 75 at the moment, which is pretty solid. And right behind him, averaging 72 is IPAP. So he's number 2. So ideally, I believe that they're the two that you'd want to have to go with. Currently, I got the Wish version of that I got Arrow and Haas, which I'm still pretty happy with for now. Chris, is there anyone there, mate, that you think might be interesting?
Yeah, I've got a couple, and they're both dual, both Bulldogs. I'm actually kind of waiting patiently for a bit of a price drop from Thompson. Unfortunately, he was a victim of TPJ being in the prop rotation. I think his minutes suffered because of it. I think he had a couple of 30 scores in there. So I'm just going to wait a couple of weeks on that because I think with TPJ out of that rotation and Hetherington getting injured, I think that's going to open it up a bit for him, and he'll definitely be a prospect in the future. I'm not super keen on front rowers at the moment. Like the only two that seem to be scoring are IPAP and Pass, and the rest are just a heap of shit, really. I mean, look at AFB's. AFB's just not getting through the work. He's not offloading. It's just a bit of a shit fight there. So if you can get away with some cheapies like King and stuff like that, and maybe get a Haas or an IPAP in there for your just to hold it together for you, then I think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, that's what I had before this week, because I had Arrow and I had Haas, but I brought Haas in last week and brought Arrow down to second row. So for the last 2 weeks, I've had to play Max King because I didn't have the other King. I still don't have the other King. And up until last week, I was happy playing Max King, but that 35 minutes he's been getting every week, and he's been getting 55, 51, but then last week gets to 39. So I just need to, that's what the reason for my trade this week was to bring Arrow up to the front row. So I don't need to, I'm not forced to play a Max King. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think the cheapies in the front row, there's a lot of good value there. And we can always aspire to getting those good front rowers moving forward. Is there anything? Sorry, go.
Sorry, I might just share with the audience what my front row looks like at the moment. So I've got Leo Thompson, I've got Max King, I've got AFB, and I've currently got the shitter of the Siphides, Jay Siph, who's absolutely done nothing as a pod. So and I'm this week I'm actually going to trade out Jay Siph for Mr. King from Melbourne. So that'll be my trades in the front row anyway.
Yeah, I think starting a bit of money there, and then also getting a bit more stability, I guess, in point scoring. So
yeah, definitely, it's so shit.
Yeah, Glenn?
Yeah, I'll just go through what mine is, and then I'll mention a couple we spoke about because there's some interesting ones spoken about. So I have a Haas. I started Haas, and I started M. King and James Snell-Brown, and my other one is Josh King. And they've been scoring quite nicely for me. So I've just been playing Josh King and Haas in my front row, and James Snell-Brown obviously was my other starter but got injured, and I had Bullimore, which I traded to get the other King, Josh King. But one you mentioned was Arrow. So Arrow hasn't been what you would hope, but what I do like of Arrow is the minutes that he's playing in a side that's got a really nice draw coming up. And I think that Arrow could be the beneficiary in that side of some points based on how quick they are in the middle with Cook, Murray, Walker. They're a quick side. And so if they get on that front foot, you could be lucky with Arrow, definitely as a cash cow. The other one I want to mention, and I'm mentioning this because I think he's a trap, but I see people are buying him, so I think we should mention it, and that's that Nime. I think just don't do it. I just think that's a bad move. I think that what's the other one from the Knights? There's Leah Thompson and there's
Mamasia, yeah.
Yeah, Mamasia. I think he's a wait and watch too. I mean, with that Barnett out, minutes could be more favourable to the middle. But I did see Frizzell was named, Brady Jones coming in. So, I don't think Brady's going to play big minutes. So that could see some of that rotation go through the second row, which could mean big minutes for the middles. So just keep an eye on those, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to the second row forward. So I'm going to start off with bloody fantastic week last week is Cam Murray, 661K. After last week, he's averaging 86 and with a break even of 6 and owned by only 10.6% of coaches. So I really like what I saw from him last week. Those lines he ran and those set plays that he was part of, they were amazing to look at. I'm not sure about you guys. That was I never even thought about starting him this year, and that just really, I don't know, opened my eyes a little bit, I guess. I don't think I can get him in yet, but I really like the look of him. Chris?
Yeah, he's a central part of their attack. I think they realised how terrible they were going the first round, and then how benching him was just the worst idea ever. And he's central now. Like, if I could, and there weren't so many cash cows around, I would definitely be bringing him in this week, because like he has a BE of 6. So if he scores, anywhere near what he did last week, he's going to be 700s. So yeah, he's definitely a guy you got to move on this week if you want him, because especially with the draw coming up. But other than that, it's been quite the run for the mid prices in the second row.
Yeah.
If you started the year with a bunch of mid prices in the second row, you'd be pretty happy with yourself right now. I think I managed to get most of them, but the ones that I'll just go over my the ones I started with. So at my current second rowers, I believe I've got Fermor, Katoa, I've got Aitken, I've also got Tuolagi, I've got Taumalolo, and I can't remember who else. I think that might be it. Those are the ones I'm running with at the moment. Quite happy that I went lower priced guys in that area, because like there's been so many spot fires that's been created for people, like with Crichton and Fafita, just bleeding cash, and a bunch of other guys as well. So I'm pretty happy there. But yeah, at some point they're going to hit the top of their value, these mid prices, and there's going to be some chopping and trading going on. But at the meantime, I'm pretty happy with it. But yeah, other than Murray, I don't really see many good ones. I thought Nanai, that's 100 with 3 tries. That's I don't know. The base is just not there. I think you'd be lucky if you get to 500K with him, and if you get to 500K, just sell him straight away.
Yeah, I think that's one of the guys you got to keep an eye on. Is look at his projections, look what his break even is. Keep an eye on that every single week, especially after the week before when he had negative 19 in errors alone, like a 36 with a try, because he made about, I think, 11 missed tackles and a lot of errors. So I think he's just a keen young fellow that wants to have a crack, and sometimes gets a bit overzealous in there. So just keep an eye on him. As soon as he peaks, get off him, and there'll be someone else you can grab that might be on the up. So Glenn, anything else in the second row, mate, you're looking at?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what my second rowers are, so our viewers know. So I've got Fafita, Aiken, Lolo, Olakau'atu, Katoa, and Tuolagi. I've also got Firma, but I've got him at centre wing. And Murray, I really do like, and I kind of annoyed that I missed the boat on him. I kind of wished I started him. I had Angus, and I went Angus to Olakau'atu, so that was the change there. That was the only one that was different. But Murray's as you know, I love the structures. I love watching set plays, and Roosters, Storm, and Bunnies do it better than anyone, and the Panthers. And you just watch those set plays with Cameron Murray, and you have to think with that draw coming up that he could do anything. You could actually get him crossing over a couple of times, or at least try assists. I see the scenario with Cookie to Murray happening a bit, hence the reason why I've jumped on Cookie. Murray's my Cookie reason, if that makes sense. There's a few others in there that I just thought I'd bring up. So Wilton, people are jumping on. I say don't do it. Job security is not good. Someone's coming back. Butcher is another one. Well, look, I said to everyone, don't do it last week. the minutes between, and he played 80 last week to my surprise. If that happens again, then possibly, but I still think Angus will come back into that position. So job security there is not very good. Nanai, obviously, his base is terrible, but it's a season where money's hard to make. So, if you're looking to make coin, Nanai will do you that. But as Chris rightly pointed out, I don't think it'll be a lot of it. And you sometimes got to base the amount of what you're going to make against what your trade's worth. And there was one other one. Obviously, I mentioned him, Tuolagi. What I am worried about this week as an owner of Tuolagi and as an owner of Katoa is they both named 4 forward benches. And so that's a bit of a threat to me. In one of my setups this week, I don't have either in my starting side, but I think I'm going to risk the biscuit and go Tuolagi based on the amount of points the Titans are letting through in that position. So, yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, there's one player that I definitely don't say trading him in is an option, but I do like the look of him at the moment. He's just plotting along quite nicely. He's Curran. Curran's actually looking pretty good. He's looking very safe. So, and I think with the way base is looking this year, I think the safety of base is actually a really good call out. In saying that, he's got a break even of 71, so he's not going to go break through the roof or anything. But he's quietly plotting along, averaging 66. And he's under 600,000. So I do like Curran. I won't be trading him in, but I just like the look of him NRL wise. And it could be one of those guys. I think maybe watch out for him if he gets picked in Origin, but it could be around the buys if he doesn't get picked for the Origin there. So.
And there's 2 others that I haven't mentioned, and one of them I think is very interesting is Kaloa Matangi. So he played 80 last week as well. So if that continues again with that draw coming up, I think he'd be a great buy on that edge. And obviously Yo. I mean, Yo's consistent, and but I'm a bit worried about Yo now with Cleary back. I think that he was needed in the middle and played that kind of ball-playing lock role. I think that somewhat changes with the addition of Cleary, and I also think that minutes might alter as well with the addition of Cleary. So, but Kaloa Matangi, if you want a pod, guys, jump on.
Yeah, I like that one. That's good. Alrighty, so let's talk about the halfbacks, boys. So. Hold on everyone's list right now. We'll start with the big money one. Here's Cleary. Cleary's ball back this week, guys. What are your thoughts on having Cleary in your team? Would you wait?
Who are you asking?
Oh, sorry. Go, Chris.
With Cleary, I think it's definitely a wait. Just I know that injury that he has, it's a very it's quite minor in the recovery. So like he could come out just guns blazing. But I think you got to wait and just see how he fits into that structure. See if he has any, he might have a slow start if you guys are lucky, and might just bump out a couple of 50s, 60s, and the price will plummet. So I think you just got to watch for a while. And I think with Hines, I would not be going Hines to Cleary. Not a chance. Like he is just in this golden vein of form at the moment. So just hold on to him for dear life until it stops, because he might not stop till he's at $1 million at this rate. So just hold on, make that money, and if he keeps scoring hundreds, then there's no way you can trade him to Cleary. So just keep that in mind. I'd be making other moves to get Cleary in, and if you can, probably get Cleary and Hines in that halfback spot as a goal. So yeah, but there's some other performers there. Like you've got Schneider, who's on the bubble this week. He's got a minus, I think, negative 64 break even. Mm-hmm. So he's definitely a guy you want. He's probably the premier cash cow this year. So jump on. If you miss it, you're likely to miss out on a whole bunch of money. Like just to put it in perspective, if he scores 60, he probably goes up 100K this week. So it's a huge jump in cash. So definitely don't miss out. I don't mind it if you have to, to get him. If you've got Hines in your halfback spot and you want to bring in if you want to trade out Tedesco, it's controversial with the draw, but I don't mind it. It's actually something I'm going to do because I've got Sexton and Hines in my halfback spot, and I've got to jump on that cash cow. If I miss out, I'm just gonna have to kiss the season goodbye and just have I'll be missing out on an extra gun in my team. So that's what I'm doing. It's a bit of a hot take, but yeah.
Yeah, I think my take on the Cleary thing is if you are able to get him in this week, for example, then it's not like you're struggling for cash. It means you've got the cash ready to go, and he ain't changing price in week one. So you have that any doubt in my mind that he might come out with a cracking game, you miss one game, like it's not the end of the world. But then if he comes out in a cracking game and you don't want to say wait one more game and go, yeah, I'm getting him in this week, he's going to cost the same as he did this week. So I think definitely a wait and see on him. But if you brought him in and he goes mental, the other thing about him is we all know that everyone's been all those good players are overvalued from last year. The game's a bit different this year. We don't want to make the same mistake that those did with getting in turbo, losing 300k. So I think it's definitely a wait and see. And I think we've got a capable replacement there in Hines to hold the fort for a meantime. You know what I mean? He's making some big. If you're going to get Cleary in this week, you'd have to get him for Hines, really. And I think Hines scores similar. So, what are your thoughts, Glenn?
Yeah, I have a few food for thought. Is that the term on this subject? So I see a few people who are giving up Tedesco, moving Hines down into the fullback position and bringing Cleary in. I mean, it's a pod move based on ownership. And if he was to go off, then kudos to you. I'm not doing it. I don't think it's the right play. I think based on the way this season's unfolding, points per dollar, Hines, Teddy, Pappenhausen's my setup at the moment, and Cleary is a definite work towards. I think we saw what happened with Turbo. Everyone had to have him because of and they've paid the price. And I have the feeling that's what will happen with Cleary. I still think he'll average 80 to 100, possibly. But I mean, when you can get someone that's doing that for 300 or whatever it is, K less in Hines, I personally wouldn't be giving up Tedesco. I know people are, and I understand the reasoning behind it. Money's hard to come by. I just think that draw for the Roosters is just too pretty. The other three I would mention, I mean, obviously we said Snyder. I think that genuine cash cows this season are hard to come by, and he is a genuine cow in that position. So I have Hines and Snyder in my halfback position. But the other two I wanted to mention was Sexton. I actually really like what I'm seeing from Sexton. I actually think that's a good setup you've got, Chris. So what did you say? You got Hines and Sexton at half, is it?
Yeah, currently I do, but it's going to change.
Selling Tedesco, moving Hines down to buy who?
I'm basically freeing up cash because I've got that dead spot in Ilias at 5'8".
Right.
So I'm going to try and push someone like Brown into that spot with that cash, just so the money can pile up. Because my goal is to have Hines and Cleary in the half spot, and I want to do it as quickly as possible. So I'm hoping that it's not that Brown can go off in the next few games because they've got a pretty good draw, and that gap can be bridged quite substantially.
The biggest question I've had asked of me this round and last round, I get a lot of messages from people saying, help me, what should I do? And the one that I'm getting asked the most is Walker to Hines. Is it sideways? In my opinion, it's not. And I'll tell you why. Keary in the side with, in the Cronulla side, Hines is touching the ball on average 60 times a game. He is the dominant half in that side, which means that he's the main playmaker. When it comes to the Rooster side, Walker isn't. And I also think that Walker's missed 19 tackles from memory in the last 2 games. I have this fear that he could either jump to the bench and someone like a Hutcho could start like he did last year and then come in at, but the bigger one for me is that he's playing second fiddle. But I mean, I really like Walker. I mean, ideally, if I could have afforded to, I'd have Hines Walker as my 2 halves. Or the other one I would do is Hines Sexton. I like both. I have Brown already as well, so I have Hines, Brown, Pappenhausen, Teddy. But they're the only ones in my that I think are in the conversation for me. Cleary, no. Hines, yes. Snyder, yes. Walker, maybe. Sexton, yes.
Yeah. One of the guys I've got Munster, so I'm pretty happy. But yeah, Brown is looking good, isn't he? I know you guys tried to get me on him this year, and I was trying to go for gold and get Munster, which I'm still happy with. But yeah, I think Brown's looking real good. I think he had a lot of potential when he first did his rookie season, and he didn't kind of show it as much. And this year he's just breaking out, looking great. All right. Speaking of that, now let's move on to the 5'8s. We'll start with the guy that I in my team, Munster. He's looking bloody fit. He's looking really good. Looking keen to play. I'm really really enjoying having him in my team. So he's averaging 97 after 2 games. Break even of 12. His price $649K and owned by 14% of coaches. I know that's not pod territory, but it's not too far off considering he's a gun. I'm pretty happy with that. Your thoughts, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I should have gone with my first instinct of captaining Munster. I was telling everyone I was going to do it. And then once Hines had that 120 odd in the first game, I was thinking, I've just got to loop this for sure. Especially with the scores we've had this year, like especially in round 1, round 2, like there was hardly any hundreds. So I figured, like, if this guy's hitting 100 this week and the rest of the weather is forecasted to be pouring down for the rest of the weekend, then I've got to take it. So that's what I did. And unfortunately, didn't do the Munster move, which would have probably only given me another extra 35 points. So it was a decent move to do it. It didn't cost me that much, but in hindsight, Munster was the move. But who knew he was going to be playing like this year? He is like a fullback there. He's playing on both sides of the field, breaking tackles everywhere. Just he's a menace out there.
I knew.
Yeah. That's it. I was on the record last week in the last week's podcast saying I wasn't a captain him. And I told you guys off air that I traded Angus out for Payne Haas last week. And I thought, if I got to have Haas in my team, I might as well captain him and play it safe because I obviously missed out on Hines. And yeah, so I was just stuck with my gut. So number one rule, guys, stick with your gut. Glenn, mate, your thoughts on Munster?
Yeah, so what I was going to say was, firstly, that Munster's playing in a contract year. And whenever a player's playing in a contract year, they always become that little bit more interesting for SuperCoach. But one of the things that I do when I set up my sides is I look for who I think can score as well for less, for cheaper. And so Brown, I think, was 150K cheaper. Is that right? Who's averaging pretty much near what Munster is. And then I had Grant, who's 50K cheaper than what Brandon Smith was 50K cheaper than what Grant was. So the idea was to try and, I try and rob Peter to pay Paul, and so that I can pretty up other positions. Look, I'm a nervous non-owner of Grant, and I'm a nervous non-owner of Munster, especially with a game coming up against the Dogs. And I don't see myself letting go of Brown, but I see a scenario where I'll run Cook, Grant, Munster and Brown at some point. I just hope that I can get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly explain my mad scientist trade of Teddy, because it's pretty out there. It's a bit of a hot take. So basically the move is, so like I was saying, you move Hines down to fullback, you trade Teddy out for Schneider for the cash. Then you move the money from Ilias, who's basically doing nothing at the moment, to a Brown who you can play every week, who has a great draw. So I'm just hoping that gets me to Teddy, and then I've got extra cash in the bank, and then I can get a grant possibly next week, maybe for Taumalolo if he's not performing, or one of the other mid prices if they top out in price. So that's my plan anyway.
And I can see the logic in all of that, especially Snyder. I think, as I said earlier, it's a season where genuine cash cows are rare, especially ones starting from $1 and moving their way up. And Snyder is that. So I think I would move mountains if I was a non-Snyder owner to getting Snyder. I will caution on Ilias. I think that people are being a bit hasty in their moving on of Ilias. I think, again, with that draw coming up, I really like what I saw from Ilias in the last game. And I'm going to go on the record here and predict that Ilias makes really good coin over the next 10 rounds. And I'm going to say really good coin, like up to about 550. That's
it's a big call. You're on record too, mate.
On record, that's right. You've heard it here, boys.
After the pod, mate, I want you to send this record to me so I can file it. And
I might make that 450.
Awesome. Well, moving on next, we'll actually go to talk about Dylan Brown. So he's 510K, -5 break even. He's averaging 69.3. So it's hard to really measure against Munster because Munster's only played the 2 games, but Munster's averaging 97. So it is a bit lower, but there's a bigger sample size for Dylan Brown as well. And yeah, he's owned by 6.8% of people, even more of a pod. So yeah, he's definitely not owned. I don't believe he's owned by enough, and I'm guilty of not owning him. So I think we've already spoken pretty much about how highly we think of Brown. And the last one I'm going to talk about here is actually is one a bit of a hot topic this week is Dearden. Dearden's stepped up a little bit this year. He's shown glimpses in the past, but never any consistency. Do you guys see it going? Keep going. Glenn?
I think I wouldn't do it, but I can understand. Look, Walker's got a really nice run coming up, Cody Walker with South, and so people are probably trying to find a way to get to Cody Walker. And I think what they're thinking is, I'll get Dearden in for Elias. I'll try and work him up as high as I can possibly get him so that it's an easier transition. And it will be from Dearden to a Cody Walker. But the flaw in that is what you just pointed out, is consistency. Look, he plays for the Cowboys, who have been terrific, let's be fair, in the first 3 games for the Cowboys. But do I see that continuing? Absolutely not. Do I see Dearden continuing? Absolutely not. And I'll say that on the record. I could be wrong, and if I am, I am. I mean, every year the side will jump up and surprise us, and Cowboys could be that. But they haven't changed a lot in personnel. They've got the same coach. I just think that they've played a side in the Broncos, and I know there's a lot of Bronco fans on here, and I don't want to bag them, but I'm going to do it again, who have no idea. I have no idea what they're doing. And it's sad, because when I look at that side on paper, I think it's one of the best sides. I really do. And I just think it's sad that they're being coached the way they do. And they've got a 9 that has a problem with his neck. He can only look left. He just has no ability to look right. And it's sad. So I think that I would be cautious on that trade.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say is I had a few questions asked to me last week, before the round started last week. And I think the best trade I thought with Dearden was Hastings to Dearden. I like that trade a lot, because obviously he's out for a little bit. Couple of guys were asking whether they should try and go Ilias to Dearden. I didn't really like it too much, but the Hastings to Dearden was a perfect trade, I thought. And he's that stepping stone to get to where you need to go. But I think now, I'm not sure what his draw's looking like. He's got Roosters, then he's got Warriors, and then Raiders in the next 3 games. Not too bad a draw. The Roosters might be a bit of a challenge defensively, but yeah, I think last week was the week to get on him, and I think the player to trade him from was Hastings.
And I think you've identified the reasoning behind those that are doing it. They've probably had a Hastings Amon set up, and they've probably thought, oh no, Hastings is out, Amon's not delivering, and he's got a really tough draw. I identified that with Amon really early, and that's why I got him out of the 5'8" spot and moved him to the bench at centre wing. So I thought, well, hopefully he makes money, but he's not someone I needed to play. So I think for those with Amon Hastings set up and they have no way of getting out of it, Dearden is but I mean, it's only 60K more to get to Brown. So find the 60K guys and get to Brown.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Your thoughts, Chris, on Dearden?
Yeah, I'm a bit less pessimistic on Dearden, to be honest with you. I think he's a really good player, and he was just under a lot of pressure at the Broncos, and he's starting to show that promise now. So potentially, I think he's probably a 60 average player, and that's probably a bit of a hot take considering how terrible he's been in the past and Supercoach wise. But I think he can really put together some scores, especially now that he's basically that dominant force in attack with Chad Townsend basically controlling the game, and he's not making that many tackles, so he's just being utilised as a offensive weapon essentially. So yeah, I wouldn't sweat on him. Like I don't know. I'm facing this same conundrum with, do I go for Dearden? Do I go for Brown? I really like Brown because he has a lot of upside, but I would not fault anyone for getting Dearden because he's going to make a bunch of money. And I don't think the Roosters team is as good as we think they are at the moment. I think going up to North Queensland in that heat, it's going to be really tough for them. And I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. So, yeah, and Dearden, he's going to do a lot of things against teams like Canberra and the Warriors. He could be a 600K player. I don't know. It's a bit of a hot take, but I think do not think that he's not going to do well because I think he's going to have a great season.
Can I just respond to that, Chris? I just want to go on record here saying that I actually agree with you in the fact that Dearden's a good player. I've never doubted his ability. And I think if you remember in the chat last season, I repeatedly kept saying, why do the Broncos not play Sullivan and Dearden? I thought they were the 2 that they should have ran with. I thought O'Sullivan was you saw what he's done with the Panthers. They're both really good players. Dearden are running and SOS controlling with that kicking game, I thought would have been a much better answer for the Broncos. My issue is with the Cowboys themselves. I think that's my problem. But look, they have got some exciting players there. I really like what I've seen with Nanai. I don't know if 60 is a fair call, but I mean, I'd say 45 maybe. I think that he'll make you money. I think you'll have them up games, but we'll see. I mean, time only tells, and I hope for those Dean owners out there that it does pay off.
Fair enough. All right. After the 5 let's move on to the centre wing guys. Here's a surprise packet that I for this year. How good's Dan Gagai going? He's looking the goods this year. I did not see this coming. I thought he was going to go back to the Dan Gagai of the Knights, which he back is again. So, what are your thoughts on Gagai, guys? He's going pretty good. Glenn.
Well, look, I don't know if anyone paid attention last season, but of the top 20 centre wingers, I think there was only 2 of them that were centres, and Gagai was one of them. Most of them were wingers last season based on the nature of the season and how it was played. He's a genuine gun to me. And I mean, the Knights in general have looked much better all over the park. I think that the Knights have always had promise to me. And Gagai, he's no surprise to me. I didn't touch Gagai, and I won't touch Gagai based on points per dollar. I mean, if money was an object, Grant would be in my side, Munster would be in my side, and so too would Gagai. But a problem is money is an issue, and I think there's better points per dollar. I think much better actually, based on draws coming up, like the Tupos and the Killer, Campbell Graham, I mean, and a few others that are, I think could get you that same upside. And then you've got May, Targo, Penasini, Smith, possibly Suali.
Yeah, well, what I'll say now is this number here that in these stats that actually surprised me a little bit. I know it's still pod territory, but 9.3% of people still own him. That's a bit higher than I expected. I thought being at his price point, he'd be a little bit higher. But yeah, 12,000 people actually own Gagai, which is I'm hoping I've never had a head-to-head against any of these guys, so I'm hoping that they stay away from me. But even last week they got smashed by the Panthers, and this still gets a 60-point score, which is pretty solid there. Your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, it's it doesn't actually surprise me, to be honest, because that's who he is. He's just a guy that's hard to tackle. He creates a lot of problems on an edge for the opposing sides. So, and now I can understand why the Knights are so successful, because they're playing a team game. It's not all reliant on Ponga anymore. They've got threats on both sides. They've got Best on one side. They've got Gagai on the other. Their forward pack's always been formidable, and it's going really well for them. Apart from Gagai, I think another guy definitely to consider that he's always been on my radar, but now he's actually switched sides to his preferred edge, and it's Kelly from the Titans. He was really uncomfortable last year because they switched him to the right side, and now he's back on his left side with Fermor. And man, he looks so good. I was literally thinking that by about Origin time this year, I'm definitely going to want to have him in my team, because he looks phenomenal out there, just playing what he sees and breaking tackles at will, and pretty keen on him. Didn't have the best game last week, but there's definitely promising signs.
Yeah, not the best game, but 62 points.
Sorry.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
That's pretty solid. Sorry, Glenn.
Those paying attention, they'll notice, like I said, last season, it was all wingers. The way the game was being played, they had to condense in the middle, and it was opening up the edges and enabling wingers, and centres really missed out. So this season, there's a lot of centres that are unders. There's a lot of wingers that are overs. And as Chris just pointed out, I think you're right on the Knights. It's good to watch because they are playing as a team, and it's not just pass it to Ponga, pass it to Best and hope for the best. They actually have the strength on both sides. But I think you'll identify in quite a few sides now that the centre position, as you just pointed out, Kelly is a very good one. Graham, Campbell, there's a few. If you go through and look at some of the points coming down, you'll notice that the centres this year, based on the way the game's being played, because this year it's a much more base stat game, and you find your centres have a much better base than usually wingers. Although wingers will take that, like your Targos or your Mays or your Tohos and Tupos that bring the ball back and then carries, and they've still got the ceiling. Those centres usually have a much better base. So interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we move on to I believe the buys this week, there's one other player I want to talk about really. And this guy is you say what you want about the Broncos, but this guy is the one benefiting from Turpin's left-handed turn. and that's Herbie Farnworth. He's
Yeah.
looking bloody good, isn't he? I've always liked Herbie Farnworth as a player. I've watched him on the field, and I'm like, this guy's looking really good, but it never really translated to Supercoach. But this year it seems to be going that way, and I'm really liking what I see from him. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, he's really good. Like, he's just always involved. He's that guy. He's having about 12 to 15 runs a game, that sort of thing. He's basically doing what Stagg should be doing, and really, really outclassing him, I find. And I think the Broncos really need to re-sign him immediately, because he is just a phenomenal, and he defends so pretty well too. So, like, yeah, that's it's not his edge that's getting bombarded, that's for sure.
Glenn?
Can I go on a little brag here? I don't know if you remember in the chat who I posted as all the try scorers this round, but I said, get on Farnsworth. I said, get on Latz. I said, get on Tedesco. I said, get on Dearden. I also said, get on Luciano Leilua and Nofaloma. But that's all the ones I said. So, I mean, I had a pretty good run last week. And one of the reasons is because the Broncos play left. Most sides play dominantly left, but the Broncos only play left or in the middle. And Farnsworth's just a workhorse and a half. And some of the people that we haven't mentioned that I think are important is that based on the fact that the game is based around base, Firma and Aiken, I own both, I think are very good plays in the middle at centre wing. You know, you can have two strikes and two players like that. You know, I think they're not bad to own at centre wing.
Yep, totally agree. I think someone asked me earlier last week before the game started, I think it was in our Tragics group, who should I play, Penasini or Coates? And I was like, in my head, did a bit of an analysis and said, who's defending on that side? Wanga Blake. All right, Coates will score 2 tries on that side there, and Meany scored 2 tries on that side when he replaced Coates. So yeah, I felt pretty happy about that. That's my little brag. So
yeah, well, Ty had him, as you know, Ty had him as well on the left edge. So that was a nice play as well. That left edge for the Eels too, Wacker Blake, you know, like that spot's also a prime real estate, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'll say one more thing in the centre wing is what are you all doing with May? Are we all bringing him in this week, or are we going to wait a week? What are your thoughts on that, Glenn?
I am. And but I mean, it's risky when you do that, you know, they get injured, and but that's just unlucky if you do. I'm bringing him in because I think to myself, next round, I don't want to be in a position where I have to. I'd rather do it when I don't need to, if that makes sense. So that week, if I have any situation, I'm hoping to not trade at all next round. But if I'm in a position where I have to, I don't want to be in a position where I have to get May and then I can't get, I have to elsewhere. If that makes sense. So I'm going to jump early on May and bring him in this week. Whether I play, I just want to say one thing too, don't play backs. And I mean, this is a rookie error by me, playing Penasini versus Storm. You just don't play backs versus Panthers or versus the Roosters usually, but it's definitely not versus Storm. And I paid the price for not doing that last week with Penasini, even based on his good base. It was just the non-play.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Chris, with May? Would you, if you could, would you hold off, or should you bring him in this week?
I probably would hold off. I just want to see what the makeup's going to be like after this week. See, it's best just to hold off on these guys, because I know they're going to score points for you, but it just depends what your center makeup's like. If you've got some dodgy centers in there and you want to get rid of them, I don't mind it. But if you've got a makeup of pretty decent centers, I'd probably just sit on it and just wait and see if he gets through this game uninjured, because the worst thing is downgrading to him and then he doesn't go anywhere and you're just sitting there with that 250 on the pine every week and it's not growing and it's just an eyesore really. So I don't mind people bringing him in, but yeah, it's definitely worth having another look just for cash generation purposes. But I'm not saying it thinking about points. He could score another 100 and it'd be great. But yeah, I'm just solely looking at cash.
Well, one thing I'll say, you guys had 2 opposing views there, and the funny thing is, I actually agree with both of you. I'd rather hold off on him. However, I need the cash to get one of my trades in, and my center wings are atrocious. So I feel as though it's a win-win for me. But I would rather, like you said, hold off and wait one more week, especially because Cleary's back now. That team's going to change a little bit with the direction. They might go right a bit more as well with Cleary there. But I feel like I've been forced this week to actually make that trade. I'm literally 10k short of going Walker to Hines, so I'm going to be forced to make that trade. So
that was
yeah.
kind of my reasoning too. If I'm being honest, the cash also enabled me to do something else. So.
Yeah, so I'll just go through my own centre wings at the moment. Last week I brought in Zach Lomax just as a bit of an anchor for the centre wings, and then I've got Billy Smith. I've got Penasini from the Eels, got Coates, and I've got who else do I have? Can't even remember. But those are pretty much the main ones. Those are the ones I'll be playing every week, and Targo as well. That's the other guy I was thinking of. And then I've just got Vilea there as a bit of a loophole sort of guy that I can use, because I'm not going to trade him out. It's just not worth it. He's only 205k. But that's probably why I'm not going to go this week on Talon. So I'll just hold off just because I've got those guys that are pretty good plays this week. But next week he's definitely coming in if he's still going to get named. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I like the look of him. I think we all like the look of him from when he played last year. He looked pretty solid, and I want to see more of him. But in saying that, you don't know what's going to happen. I think they really love Crichton. Not Crichton, sorry, Staines. And I think Staines is pretty much there, and they're going to keep him there. I know Ty's coming back in 8 weeks, but there's definitely an option to bring him in. But I'm just a bit nervous about what they're going to do when he does go. But by then, he'll be making a fair bit of cash, hopefully. So is there any other centre wing guys that are options, or maybe left field, or even ones that could be good cash grabs there that we haven't discussed yet, Glenn?
Well, Paulo and Coates both have a break even of 9. I'm not a fan of Coates based on his work rate, but I still think in that Storm outfit that he could still be one of the leading try scorers for the season. Jackson Paulo on that left edge again outside Walker. I mean, that's not such a bad trade. I just wanted to say what my back line was and my reasonings, because I got Staggs and I'm just done with him. So Staggs to me was a nice play for me and a bit of cash injection into my side. But then the rest of them, I've got Firma, Targo, Penasini, Smith, Amon, and instead of I've got May now coming in. So I mean, I have quite a lot of depth in there, and I could actually not go May and just play Penasini and Targo, Firma, and and Smith, and not do it, I guess. But I agree. There's sense behind both. I mean, the golden rule is wait for the third, and that is the general rule. So I'm not going to debate that one. Yeah.
There's one other player that I'll mention here, just because I thought he was surprisingly highly owned. Actually, only 2% owned less than Firma himself, and that's Stephen Crichton. He's owned by 12% of coaches, which has surprised me a little bit. I feel like you may have got a few good scores, which is great out of him, but I feel like he might be potentially a sell soon. With Cleary back, he's going to lose a bit of base points there with the goal kicking. And like I said, the way that game he's played with Cleary. Crichton didn't get many. It wasn't very. When he was a lot cheaper, he was more relevant in that team. But I just don't see, like last year, he wasn't overly exciting with Cleary in that team dominating the play in the making. So I'd be careful with him. Maybe get 1 or 2 more weeks and then probably punt him. I believe anyway, Crichton. And with that nice little price rise, he's 479 with a nice negative break or nice low break even. I think you can definitely make a bit of cash and then bugger him off and get someone nice around the 550 mark. So, all right, guys, let's move on to the fullbacks. So, who are the 2 fullbacks you guys are going to aspire to for this year? I'll start with you, Chris. Who do you think the 2 guys you want to have at the end of the year, mate?
Ooh, so my end game fullbacks are probably going to be Turbo and Brian Pappenhausen, I think. I really like Teddy, and he's always in my side. But the way things are going, I think I'm just going to have to go the Turbo and Pappy route. I just think they're just too destructive, and Pappy with the goal kicking is really good. Latrell's a bit of a mention there, but he's come into the season so unfit that I'm off him. I don't think I'm going to be anywhere near Latrell this year. He could probably play pretty well, and he'll be pretty good with the goal kicking, but I just think other options are so much better. Hines, if you want to get him there, that's good too, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think the reason why I asked that question is because a lot of people are trading out Teddy this week to bring Hines in, and I feel like getting Hines in is a bit of a priority for this week. I do agree, but selling Teddy seems like a really odd thing to do. However, if you're not planning on keeping Teddy and your end game is Turbo, I see the merit in trading out Teddy this week. I'm not going to do it, but I can see it because you can't have them all.
No.
So if you're trading out Teddy this week to get a Hines in to build that cash up, and then maybe you get one of your like Schneider, build up enough cash, put Hines back up there, trade Schneider out, and get your Turbo in there. I think that's the ideal game, but I'm not sure if you can do that fast enough. While when Turbo gets his, I reckon Turbo bottoms out about 9, maybe early 900s. So you might want to, and that'll probably be in about 3 rounds. So it might be tough to get him in at that price.
Yeah, I think but the thing with Turbo is he's looked pretty ordinary. So he's got to get his shit together first. That might take him a few rounds, and that price could go to 800. So I'm just gonna happily wait on the sidelines until he works his shit out, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Glenn, your thoughts, mate?
Well, my game plan was and is and probably will be was I started Teddy and Paps. I'm holding them both right until the bye round. The plan was to offload Tedesco after that pretty draw. I think it's around 10 or 11 where Tedesco's draw gets a bit ugly. And I think there's one that people are forgetting is Gutherson. It's been quietly chugging along very nicely and a very nice draw as well. And Latrell, I think when he gets back to fitness is an option. But my end game is also Paps and Turbo. So it was run Paps and Teddy right up till the bye round. And that would alter based on how Turbo was going, obviously. I mean, that was always, we've always got to keep Turbo in consideration. But Manly just looked terrible. And so, yeah, get rid of Teddy round 13, bring in Gutherson, play him through the bye period because they play the second bye. And then after that bye period, it would be Gutherson to Turbo.
Yeah, no, I think my plan was more similar to yours, Glenn. I wanted to hold on to my gun fullbacks as long as possible. Initially, it was going to be to play fullback roulette, but after what I've seen so far, I think we're going to need those trades. And I feel like also that no one's really standing out in that fullback position besides Hines, really, but you can get him in the halfback as well. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stick strong with Teddy and Puppy for as long as I possibly can. And I said, I had Gutho written down here. Gutho is sitting nicely at 650,000, and he's averaging 69, which isn't ideal for a fullback last year, but not too bad this year. Considering Turbo's averaging 55, and he's double the price. So, and even Puppy, who's only averaging 7 more points a game than Gutho. So, and we all know Gutho had a nice early draw, and he has those points in him every now and then. And Para starting to, I think their defense is going a bit downhill, but their attack is actually looking pretty good still. So,
and the Eels have a nice draw now, but unfortunately we can't on all 3. But I think if you have a nice look, you'll see that after round 13, going to Gutherson is a very genuine option based on fullbacks going out. I mean, I held my fullbacks last season, but this season, based on draw, I'll be selling Teddy to Gutherson, running him right through the bye period. And then the plan will be straight after Origin's complete, round 17, round 18, I'll bring in Turbo, hopefully, based on how Turbo's going and no injuries, please.
Yeah. So my plan was similar, where I was actually going to look at whoever the best option was, and I was looking at someone like maybe a Walsh as well as Gutho. So there's a few out there that look like they're doing all right, like even a Kennedy. I know that's a bit more left field, but if he has a decent draw, you can always jump on him as well and get those extra points and move him on later on. So is there any other fullbacks, guys, before we move on to trades and captain talk that we want to talk about? That's pretty much it.
No, not really. Yeah.
All good. All right, guys. So I'll tell you what my trades are going to be to start off with. So I'm actually going to use the boost this week. I can finally offload Nikorima. I thought I won big when he got named last week and thought I'd have a nice little pod for one more week. But he did terrible for me. So I'm going to go Nikorima, and I'm going to Starling, which frees up enough cash for me, or almost enough cash for me to go Sam Walker to Nico Hines. And then an unusual one, I'm going to go to Noah Brown, who I've been waiting on to come back from injury, but I'm just getting sick of having that weak front row. So I'm going to Noah Brown, putting Arrow up into the front row for my second row, bringing Targo up to my second row temporarily, and bringing in Tyler Mate. So that's my 3 trades, and that way I get to have some pretty solid players there coming in. And so far, I'm happy with my trade that I've made, which is only 2 so far. And I'm hoping this actually help boost me up a little bit and I don't miss out on a nice little score from Hines. I'll go with you, Chris.
Yeah, so my trades are going to be, I'm going to use the boost as well because I feel like I just need to sort this part out because I've got a front row that's a bit of a plodding front row at the moment. So there's some guys making cash, but then there's also some guys that are just pretty they're just pretty awful. To be honest, we've got Mr. Saifidi who's awful, and you've got AFB who's just not getting through any work and he's not offloading. So yeah, I'm sort of trying to decide which one of those go first. Probably leaning towards Saifidi. He's going to go down to King from Melbourne. And then Teddy's going to go for Schneider. I'm going to bring Hines down to the fullback. And then it's either going to be Dylan Brown in for Ilias, or it's going to be Hiku to Grant. I can't make up my mind which one of those trades I want to do more, but I'm leaning towards the Dylan Brown trade. So, yeah, see how we go, and I'll leave it up to you, Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my trades are Stags to May,
Mhm.
and it gives me enough money to do one of 2 things. I can turn a Moan to Firma, and it leaves me 85K, which means that if I want to use a trade boost, I can get Grant. I don't want to use a trade boost, but that's why I've done it, because it allows me to sit on it and think over the round with that money there, if that makes sense. So that's my trades, Firma and May in. I have a Billy Army, the Kiwi centre wing out, or a Moan, and the other one's definitely Stags. I love Stags and I want to keep Stags. My son says hold Stags versus the Warriors, but the ball needs to go right for him to do well, and it doesn't.
That's the thing. I think we all love Stags, but Stags isn't showing us any love this year himself. So even when Walters does go on and pass the Stags, he tends to drop it. So I think he needs to work on those errors, and I'm going to keep him for one more week because his break even's about 59. So it's not the end of the world. He's not going to go down massively. But yeah, I totally. If you sold him, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for selling him. He's letting people down. And who knows? Like I might get lucky next week with the Warriors, and he might get a nice little score for me. But I'm not holding my breath. So
in the conversation we had before the pod, Chris made a valid point about Walters. And I think when Walters comes on and plays that eyes up football, I felt much more comfortable as a Stags owner. But based on the minutes that Turpin's playing and his inability to go right, I just think, 2 runs I think Stags had in that time, and the balls that he did get were just given to him like setting him up more for failure than for success. And so it's frustrating. But if they were suddenly to name Walters at 9, I wouldn't be selling Stags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, let's move on to captains and vice captains. So I'm actually torn on. I'm actually looking at VCing for Feeder, but I'm after all the nightmares we had last week with Ammonia and Ilias. I know it wasn't too bad, but a couple of really bad scores out there. I'm tempted to actually put the C on him. It's a bit risky in game 1, but I really like for Feeder up against the Tigers with Isako at fullback. So I'm liking the idea of going straight captain on him. If I don't and I end up chickening out, I will go captain on Munster with the VC on for Feeder. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a valid one with for Feeder. The thing with him is he just needs a couple of early balls and he'll get you 100. Like, but I just don't know why they're not giving him so more ball. You should be planning your attack around him if you're paying that much money for him. But anyway, that's beyond the point. But yeah, for myself, I think it's going to be either Munster or Pappenhausen for captain, and probably going to throw. I can't really do that anymore since I'm moving Hines down to fullback with the Teddy out.
Rookie error.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's either going to be Hines captain or Pappenhausen captain or Munster. Well, those 3 are the guys. I'm not super confident with the Sharks against the Knights because they're playing quite well. So I'm probably going to go on a Melbourne guy. So I'll probably do that.
All right, Glenn?
Well, so my VC is a toss between two. It's either on Fafita or on Hines. And then my C, I'm looking at going Pappenhausen. But I think there's another couple out there. I think Tedesco, if you don't have Pappenhausen, it's a good C. I think Grant and Munster are obviously good C's as well.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. One thing I'll say on Fafita, and someone brought it up in another podcast, is we all know he came off at the All-Stars game with a rib cartilage injury. And we all know that that's pretty much all about pain management when it comes to playing on the field. And I think there is some still, because it can take a while for the pain to actually go away. So I believe that there could be some potential protection for him while he's not getting the ball as much. So I think he wants to play. That's the thing. But I think there could be a bit of protection there. That's why he came off in game 2 as well. So
no comment on that. Whoever made that comment is just praying or hoping that that's what's happening. I mean, it's possible, but unlikely. I think that it's very evident for me what's happening there. Jaden Campbell is just taking so much ball. They play a very left side dominant struck way of playing. But look, I think Isako into the side is actually a blessing for David Fafita. I think that you might find David Fafita getting clean ball off Isako. But again, another side that just doesn't seem to know how to use their right side. They play a lot of their football on the left. And when you've got a player of the ability of Fafita, like you saw what Stags and Fafita both did when they had clear room to move. You know what I mean? Like when they get that, you give them early ball and allow them to do what they do. And, don't try and set it up for them, then give them the ball and put them into something. Give them early ball. And to Fafita against the Tigers, I mean, we're woeful, and I am a Tigers supporter. I can see points to Firma on that edge, and I can see points to Fafita on both edges. So they're both good options.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to lean towards actually putting the straight C on Fafita this week, and that's my gut feeling, and I'm going to finally stick with it. I think I've been pulling it away for too many times, and I need to stop using my head, use my heart. So, all right, guys, is there anything else we want to say before we wrap things up?
No, I'm just hoping I get a nice 1,300 plus score this week.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, if I get 1,300, mate, I'll do a nudie run next podcast. So I don't think it's going to happen. So you're praying that I don't get one, I promise. No.
Wow.
I will say one thing. Dan, you asked if we wanted to say anything. I just want to say to other coaches out there, if you are ranked 30K, 40K, or whatever it is you're ranked, it's still early. A lot of players spend a lot of their money on their starting 17 and they neglect the bench. And if anyone had a look at the side that won this round and had a look at his actual bench, they're all NPRs. Literally everyone was an NPR of other 7 he had playing. There are a lot of people that set their sides up like that who will start off doing very well. And you'll get despondent when you see these big scores and yours in comparisons much smaller. But as a person that's played it for a while, round 9 is when you really start to get an idea of how you're doing. So if you're in 30-something thousand round 9, then you can start to stress. But early, just don't panic. Just keep plugging away.
What happens if you're 57,000 in round 3, mate? What does that mean?
It just means that you've got to try harder. Try harder.
Does it mean I need to give up podcasting and try and tell everyone what I'm thinking? Because I think it's clearly wrong. No, in saying that, though, guys, I am a head-to-head player, and I did win the 5 head-to-heads that I was in, the most important head-to-head this week. So that was my plan. It was all about head-to-head, and I know even though I'm not overall looking good, I'm actually doing quite well head-to-head in my comp. So
do you know what you are on overall points, Dan?
I can get it up now. It's quite easily. So my overall points, I'm sitting at 2730, which is a nice top 44%. So I'm in the top 50%, which is great.
So you're only about 300 points behind where I am, which isn't a big number.
Now with my 1,300 this week and your 1,000 next week, mate, I'll be fine. All right, guys, that wraps everything up. Thanks very much once again for listening. Catch you next week. See ya.
See you guys. Thank you.
I want to win. I want that trophy. I want that trophy. I want that trophy.